All right, we've got some price action to look at for you today. Looking at Bitcoin currently here on the 4 hour chart, really solid move that we've seen for Bitcoin as we sort of drop down from that 119 level right into the 115 level and a bounce back. So today we're going to look at why this price action sort of bounced back on Friday into the weekend here. So today is July 26th, 2025, and we are coming to the end of the month. So we're going to be watching that monthly close very carefully. This is the first month of Q3, and as you know, we are very bullish for Q3 and Q4 of 2025. But we have been sort of anticipating that there would be a little bit of a shakeout, right? A little bit of a pullback as we kind of broke down to this structure, and we're hitting some overbought levels on some of our key indicators. And now, guys, what I wanted to share with you today is on this 4 hour chart. This is starting to look like a little bit of a descending wedge, and I'll explain what I mean by that in just a second. But you can see I'll take a trend line from the bottoms, one, two, okay, and we can extend that out. And now we can take a trend line from the top, one, not quite there, but I would take this one here, two, three, right? Those three tops like that. And now we're getting this sort of formation that you can see, which is a very bullish continuation pattern. This would be called a bullish flagpole or a descending wedge, whatever you want to call it. But essentially, what happens is when price consolidates, it has lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, and as we kind of get squeezed into this area here, you can see that eventually we're going to reach a decision time. And from experience, this type of pattern right here, where we have this upswing and then a descending wedge, is actually a bullish continuation pattern. So the probability of this pattern actually breaking out to the upside is pretty high. Now that I could be wrong, right? It does just look like it's starting to form that kind of a pattern. But sometimes you can anticipate these patterns ahead of the market, and sometimes it pays off, and sometimes it doesn't. But that's what I'm seeing. So we got this nice breakdown, and we recovered off of these lows and back up into this resistance. So potentially, as we near the end of the month, you can see we're getting into July 29, 30. We're going to reach a decision time for the beginning of August. And we may potentially still break down and come to this 110K level, which will probably get a huge bounce. So I'll be watching for that as well. Or we can just kind of chop around here and then break out to the top as we get into August and September, and gearing up for that huge Q4 push that I am expecting. So ultimately, that's how I'm looking at Bitcoin on this 4 hour chart. Really solid price action. Let's go ahead and remove these drawings. And I want to show you, I think, the main reason why we got this nice bounce on Bitcoin. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on the RSI bands. So this is a really, really cool indicator. The RSI bands takes the traditional RSI that we're familiar with, where you have the percentage of market buyers versus sellers. And what it does is it actually puts the RSI on the actual price action and puts it as support and resistance bands, right? So what we have here is the gray line would be the 50% level, or the point of control level. And then we would have the 40% level right here in green. And then this would be 20%. Let me just double check. I think it might be 30 actually. But you know what I mean? The RSI. Okay, so we got 80, 60. So these are the two sort of overbought levels. There's the 50. That's the neutral line. And then we have 40 and 20. So this would be extremely oversold. All right. And what I actually have is I've got my settings saved so that it's always going to be looking at the daily time frame. So now we can use the daily RSI, and we can zoom in on the 4 hour and the 1 hour. And now we can really sort of have an overlap of these indicators where we can say, hey, we're looking at the 4 hour, but look, it's coming into daily support. So you can really kind of drill into the data and see how that daily that your daily indicators are being respected on lower time frames. So that's kind of cool. And what I noticed is you can see once we pushed up from this 110 level and we pushed up into the 120 level, we got outside of the RSI bands on the daily. So this is, we're looking at the 4 hour, but this would have been almost a day outside of the price action, or sorry, outside of um the overbought level at the 80% level. So see how we kind of came in, pushed up, and then we came back to it and we hit resistance, resistance. So the market really watches this. This would be clear indication of algorithm traders who are putting their trade logic into automatically trade once it breaks below, like once the price breaks below the overbought level. Once it comes back up to it, sell. That's a very, very solid logic to have for automated trading. And so we come back down into, so this essentially means we broke below the overbought level, and then once we came back to it, sold, sold, right? And then here's the price action coming down into the 40% level, right? Sorry, this would be actually 60%. I keep getting that confused. So from 80 to 60%, we bounced off. And then once we broke through the 60% level right here, we came right into the 50 to test that point, to test essentially the point of control on the RSI. So that's the 50% level. And we bounced up back to 60% buyers. Okay, so that would be on the daily RSI using a 14 period RSI, so 2 weeks worth of data. So that's really interesting. We came back into the 60% level. I think it's a pretty solid, solid push and solid base of support. You saw the last time we tested the 50 was way back here before the nice solid pump. You can see, look at this. So really, we came up into the 60, into the 60, back down to the 50, back up to the 60. See how we kind of stayed within this 50-60 range, and then once we broke above it, we pumped right up into the overbought levels on the RSI, which was 80, right? And then we came back down below it, and now we kind of tested the 50 again. So solid support. Looking at volume as well, you can see that the volume has been rising lately. So it started with this initial sell-off, and you can see that volume actually was able to hold up here, here, and here, which was a good indication that there was going to be a reversal. And that's exactly what we saw. We started to see, volume actually maintaining. You'd see the average volume line, the white line here, really sort of rising, which was a good, indication that there was a lot of buying activity at that level. All right, and we can further drill into the volume by using the volume profile, and now we can kind of get a sense of how much volume was down at this level, right? So you can see we kind of built up a huge level of volume, volume right here at 118K. It's the point of control. It's the red line that's coming across the screen. And you can see as we got into this point, we were cautioning that perhaps this was actually going to be a bit of a breakdown, as we were kind of breaking a trend line right here, and we kind of broke it right here, and we got sent down. So we were expecting this move here, and we were expecting to see support right here at the bottom of this cliff, because if we break this, then there's nothing to stop us from coming back down into 110. So the bulls were able to successfully defend this little cliff of support, okay, and push us back up into where the point of control, right? That it came right back up into the point of control, and now we're getting more trading activity happening here. This is a very, very key level, the 118 level, and I think it's looking very interesting, to see that we're coming back up in this point of control so often, right? You can really, really see the price action that's happening at that point of control. So we'll go ahead and we'll take this RSI off, the RSI bands, and we'll go ahead and throw on the RSI bars. Okay, this is another very, very cool indicator. I'll get rid of the point of control. And so what this does is, as soon as the market gets overbought, okay, I'll zoom out over here. So as soon as the market gets overbought, it will signal this little red arrow, which is a sell signal. And what the solid line is it sends a line horizontally across the screen of where the price was initially overbought. And once we come down below the overbought level, it sends this sort of dark or orange line across So it shows very, very heavy resistance because we trigger the overbought, which is the sort of peachy color. And then when we come below it, when we come below 70%, then we get the orange color. So that sort of signals we triggered the overbought level, and two, we've come back down below it. So sellers have essentially entered the market. And so you can see that once we get some sort of resistance like that, it's very hard for the price to try to break above it. As you can see here, we came up into this old overbought level, down, came up into the overbought level, down, finally broke above it, and now we were able to create some new overbought levels on this 4 hour. And you can see right here, this is very, very interesting because we actually triggered overbought here, but we actually came down out of the overbought level at a higher price. So that is very, very interesting. That really signals a very exaggerated kind of move. And so it sends a level, this very clear level across the screen of resistance. And you can see we came up to it, resistance, resistance, resistance. And so that's kind of how I'm looking at this price action. And so we're going to have to really battle this level and clear out of it before we can look higher towards 135K and ultimately 150K. So that's going to do it for today's video. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.